Hello, hello. All right, so happy to talk to you today. Tea Talk Thursday. Happy 4th of July. If you celebrate, for those of you in the Great North to Canada, I hope you had a great Canada Day this week. This week, I want to talk about planning, right? So earlier this week, I put out a post about being about a jellyfish, right? Jellyfish are beautiful to watch, but they just float. They just drift. And now they are predators. They do eat. They eat what comes through their tentacles. They're very passive, right? They don't get a choice in what they eat. Most important thing right there. They don't get a choice. So that's kind of how a lot of businesses work. They just drift along, the waves, and then every once in a while something swims through the tentacles and they catch a client, and they're fed for another day and they move on. But who wants to be a jellyfish? Like, I want to be under my own power. And sometimes when we do that, it also seems a little overwhelming. So when we start to take on that more active role and we start to be strategic, right, about what it is we want, how we want to get it, we start to play the numbers game. We have to be strategic. Sometimes it's overwhelming. And so I got this little reminder here. We want to talk about big rocks, really, the big rocks on your to-do list. And so this is just a quick kind of way that I categorize my to-do lists. Things that are super important and time critical, those are hot. They get put in your calendar. So you actually schedule time to do them in your calendar. It's like an appointment with somebody else. Those are the big rocks. You put those big rocks in your jar of time first, right? If we schedule the big rocks, guess what? They fit. The things that are super, like, they're time critical, but they're not super important, those actually stay on a to-do list. So those are the sand, right? Because the sand will fill in your jar around the rocks and they'll get done. There's room for plenty of to-do list items, but we really want to handle the big rocks first, right? So super important, time critical. These tend to be your project pieces. This tends to be things that have super critical time, things like paying your taxes, filing your taxes, right? Those are super important. They're time critical. You got to make time for them. But things like accounting, so there's some time critical things to hit the end of the month, accounting numbers, those are going to go on your to-do list. Or if it's really important, then you schedule time. So maybe you put an hour on Friday for accounting, right? So that's kind of how I sort out to-do lists versus big rocks. Then there's things that are super important, but they're not time critical right now. So if it's not this week, if I don't have to handle it this week, I'm either going to put time in my calendar for it in a week ahead, or it's going to get shuffled off later, like a reminder in my calendar. Hey, when I come up to this week, this thing is due. That is the trigger that I need to put time in my calendar for it during that week. If it's other stuff and it's not critical, it's a great idea. We're going to write it in another book. We're going to take it off the to-do list. If you can delegate any of this, that's the first cut, right? Delegate it, get rid of it, give it to somebody else. Put it in another notebook. Save it for another time, but actually cross it off of your list. If it's not super important and it's not time critical, it goes in the things that you will want someday, maybe sooner or later. We just don't know, right? So we're just going to shuffle those off. This should whittle your to-do list down and actually give you a plan, right? So this is where you start your planning. If you're not filtering your to-do list, what happens is we start to get overwhelmed. And when we get into overwhelm, people have a couple of different responses. When we get into overwhelm, often we get stuck. We stop making forward progress. When we get overwhelmed, we start getting distracted easily by other things. Oh, the laundry is calling my name. That's a distraction. That is your brain saying, oh, I don't know what to do with this mess over here, so I'm going to go pay attention to something else. This is where we get pulled off of track with shiny objects. It's like, no, stick to your plan, come back to the plan, put it in your calendar, big deep breath. Everything that you should be putting in your calendar should be achievable this week. So if it's an ongoing project, actually I've got some tools coming out. I'm very excited to hopefully help with this project management piece, because I think it's really, really important for keeping you on track, to keep you from feeling overwhelmed. I just had this conversation with a client yesterday. She was feeling a little like, oh my gosh, things are out of control. I don't know. Like, I don't know where my Q3, Q4 is going to come from, but she wasn't planning, right? She wasn't using the tools that she knows how to use. She wasn't putting the plan in place, really looking at the numbers, being systematic, scheduling the time to do the things that she knows works, right? So we just shifted her from being a jellyfish about her future, which was feeling very bad. She was getting a little nervous, right? So we shifted from jellyfish to actively being in control, right? This is, in coaching speak, we call this shifting from being reactive to in charge, proactive, right? So if you are feeling overwhelmed with your to-do list, if you are feeling a little stuck, if you are feeling like you're not making progress and you're just like at the mercy of the tides around you, first start with your to-do list. All right, if you have any questions, as always, I'm here to help. I'm happy to have this conversation with you. Sometimes you just got to run it through with another person to get it right. So I'm happy to have this conversation with you. Reach out. Have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you later.